wanted to have a look at the question of who we are. What is our identity? As it's tended to be viewed through different traditions from the world, and draw an analogy and a metaphor with music to help put the point across. So you will definitely find exceptions to these generalisations, so I'm not talking about the exceptions. I'm trying to draw some general patterns out here to try and make things as simple as possible. So there's lots of different traditions that make claims about who we are, what our identity is, and they often seem to be contradictory. One will be saying you're this, and another will be saying you're that, and then they don't quite fit together, and that can cause a lot of confusion. But could it be possible that they are actually all correct, but they are just holding up a piece of the truth and claiming that it is a whole truth in itself, and that you can actually take all of these claims about our identity at once, at the same time, and hold them in one integrated field. And in the same way that we can play a chord on a musical instrument that's made up of individual notes. So here I'll just play a chord. I've got my chora here, and I'll play 3 notes. Okay, 3 different notes there, and you can play them together as a chord. So a chord is one thing, but it is made up, in this case, of 3 things. So it's simultaneously 1 and 3. So you can say it's one, but you can't say it's only one thing. It is also made up of more than one thing, but it's not only just made up of more than one thing. It is one thing. So in the language of non-duality, it's not one thing, it's not just one, and it's not just several things. So if we break our identity down to 3 broad domains. The individual personality that we all love and hate. And that was number 2, Mother Nature. And if you don't believe that your identity is made up partly of Mother Nature, then just try not breathing, not eating, and not drinking, and see how that works out for you. And then the third area of our identities I was going to talk about today is formless awareness. Formless awareness. Awareness is kind of a bland word, but it's the best we got in English for it. Awareness is what you're thinking of when I say awareness. Most people understand what awareness is, but we can say it's formless because it has no shape, no colour, no simple location, but it's unmistakably part of our identity and experience. It's what we mean when we say the lights are on. And awareness, we can talk about it in it language, like it is a thing, awareness, but it's also important to remember that awareness is an I, not this kind of I, but I as an identity, your subjective, the location of that feeling of subjectivity. So those are the 3 broad areas I wanted to talk about, but of course you can split your identity up into as many different categories as you like, but we're just going to keep it simple, look at 3 today. So Western psychology tends to focus particularly on your personality, your individual personality, and the health or dysfunction of your individual personality. And it doesn't really tend to touch on the transpersonal parts of your identity. So if you're reading a lot of Western psychology, you might come away thinking, okay, well, they're saying I'm just my personality, but you might have done psychedelics or some meditation practice, some kind of spiritual practice, and discovered that there are unmistakably parts of your identity which are not just limited to your personality, so you might be feeling confused. So then you might take up a meditation practice. So Eastern meditation traditions tend to, well, not tend, there's quite a large amount of Eastern meditation tradition focuses mainly on the formless awareness aspects of our identity, and kind of privileges the formless awareness over, say, our personality, because awareness is an unchanging, permanent part of our lives. Awareness doesn't change at all throughout the entirety of our lives, always the same, whereas our personality is always evolving and changing. And I think personally, I feel it doesn't really make sense to privilege the permanent over the temporary. To use a metaphor, I don't really think that a stone is better than a flower. Stone being kind of a sort of a permanent physical structure, and a flower being a temporary one. The third area of our identities that's very common is sort of an ecological perspective, to say that we are Mother Nature, and that our identity is seamlessly integrated into the web of biological life. So my take would be that all of these three views on our identity are correct in their specific way, and they are the notes of this particular chord. Yeah. Okay. So it's three different views of who our identity is, and we can play them all together. But if we just play the chord of our identity, all these multiple identities at once, it's kind of hard to actually unpack a chord. It's this kind of blurry oneness, and if it can be really helpful to unpack a chord or your identity into its different parts, and to get a clearer idea of what makes up the whole. So if you were to come across any of these traditions on their own, and they put forward a very convincing argument that you are just one of these things, that is a little bit like trying to make music with one note. Oh, that's two there. Okay, not quite as nice as with three notes. Okay. So would you like to live your life in 3D or 1D? That's the question you've got to ask yourself. And each one of these parts of your identity is appropriate and comes to the forefront in different situations. So if your 4-year-old son comes up to you with a Lego model, proudly shows it off to you, what he's after is for you to present your individual personality and warm him up with your appreciation and personal connection with him and the success with his Lego model. He's not really going to be that pleased if you bring to the forefront your silent, formless awareness, and just sit there like some stone statue in complete silence, just taking in the moment. Not good parenting there. And if you are doing a meditation practice, there are times along the path where it's really important and appropriate to focus exclusively on your identity as formless awareness, and to not just sit there as your personality, totally identified with your thinking and emotions and that kind of thing. Then if you're sitting on the top of a mountain, taking in the breathtaking scenery, that's a really appropriate moment to feel your embodied connection with this mysterious goddess, Mother Nature, in all her finery and beauty. So that's a very simple outline of this idea that you can have many things that you can hold simultaneously in the one moment. So any moment of experience is presented all at once. So all of these identities that you have, you could call them sub-identities, are all presented in the one moment as a chord. And at any one time you can zero in on one of them. But it's always important to come back out of that experience of just playing around with the one note to make a harmonious chord again. So, enjoy your life in 3D. Thanks very much.